and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker joining me as we begin the long-awaited Pacific Division preview for the 2022-23 NHL season, our fifth season. Is that right? Right? Fifth season?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fifth. Okay. Our fifth Overtime Hockey Talk season. What's up, Justin?
Hiya.
Hiya. I feel like that's an AOL Instant Messenger response of like a hello. Hiya. HIYA, right? Like.
Yeah, my favorite, which used to throw people back in the day, but maybe that's why people never liked me that much. But I used to say ahoy hoy.
Ahoy ahoy.
I saw it on The Simpsons. Monty Burns, he's learning how to answer the phones for the first time, and he picks it up and he's like ahoy hoy.
Oh, that's great. Was that your away message, or was that just...
Dude, my away message was probably some Dave Matthews Band lyric or John Mayer lyric or something.
Oh, dear.
Maybe Amberlynn if you want to get a little like emo indie rock with it. But
Sure. Some Dashboard or something like that.
Oh, gosh. Juliana Theory.
Well, on that note, as we jump into the Pacific Division, we're going to do a better job at letting you know what to expect here on the program. We're going to go Calgary Flames, the Seattle Kraken, and then the Vegas Golden Knights and the Vancouver Canucks to close out first part of the Pacific Division preview. And then the next show we'll hit Edmonton, Anaheim, LA, and San Jose. But before we do that, I just want to take a big picture look at this division. Really, this was last year. I think going into the season was most certainly considered the weakest division in hockey. I think that it was kind of like, all right, it's going to be Vegas and Edmonton, and then who else? And of course, our predictions were all thrown out the window, and Vegas didn't even make the playoffs, and Calgary won the division. LA shocks everyone and makes the playoffs. What do you see this division as now in comparison to last year?
Yeah, I mean, in comparison to last year, I think there are a couple teams now where you can legit say these are some Western Conference contenders, as in guys, a team that could make it to the conference finals and have a legit shot. I mean, before it was all, Vegas, and then maybe you could throw Edmonton in there if Connor McDavid got hot at the right time, and then it was just all Central Division, right? Like there was no shot at any of these teams really. Realistically, I thought that they couldn't get past St. Louis or Colorado in this, in the Central. Like there was no chance. Like it was the Central or die basically.
Right.
And so now I look at this division and say, you know what? There's legit firepower in the Pacific Division that I could, if they came out of the West, I would say, okay, you know what? Not surprised at all the way these teams are growing, the way they're developing, and the way they've kind of transformed this division anymore. And it's not such a division anymore, especially with Arizona having moved on now too, where you look at the bottom and you say, maybe outside of Seattle, and you say, you know what, this is an extremely weak bottom now.
Yeah,
right?
There's outside of Seattle, there really isn't like a bottom feeder type team. Whereas, yeah, you've got Arizona, you've got Chicago in the Central. So even though the Central is still really top heavy, you do have two teams that are going to be quite bad this year. Whereas the Pacific, you really only have one. I mean, that's not to say that Anaheim is going to be great, or that San Jose is going to be very good. But I think there's still something there where they're going to kind of be right where they were last year, right? Like that, like just a little below 500. They're not going to be terrible, but they're not going to be good either.
Right. I kind of look at it like the Atlantic Division, like last year, right? We knew Montreal was going to be bad, but we also knew that Buffalo, Detroit, and Ottawa probably didn't have a chance. And now these teams in that division, right?
Wait. I don't know that we thought that Montreal was going to be this bad, right? Like, there's no way anyone thought they would win 22 games after being in the Stanley Cup Finals the year before.
But I knew they weren't going to be a playoff team.
You did have them missing the playoffs. I had them being a wild card, but
yes.
I think it's fair to say that most people had them at least as a playoff bubble team.
Right. And I think now you look at the same thing with the Pacific Division, where you don't look at the Vancouvers, the Anaheims or Seattles, and you say these are automatically going to be teams that are going to be missing the playoffs, right? There's still a realistic chance in this division where I think you could probably make a case for most of these teams, to say, okay, cool. Maybe outside of one, I think there's still a shot where one of these teams could get in.
Okay.
And it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, and that's what I like about this division. Even though it still maybe doesn't have the same top end as the Central, it's still stinking good. And I mean, the fact that it does have some of the two of the best players in the world, granted on the same team, but it's. I think this year it's going to be a more competitive division than it was last year for sure. Well, let's jump into the Calgary Flames because they certainly were active in the offseason, probably made some of the bigger moves out of any team in the NHL. Definitely, I'd say the most shocking move of all with trading Matthew Tkachuk, bringing in Huberdeau and Weegar and signing Nazem Kadri. This is a team that is not giving up. They're moving right ahead, and they're going to try and continue to contend for a Stanley Cup. Where do you see this team in comparison to last year? Are they better, a little worse? Are they just different? Where do you see this team?
Well, first off, I see this team not having a line that's going to be the top, plus minus line in the league anymore, right? I mean, when you looked at Gaudreau, Tkachuk, and Lindholm, I mean, they were all plus 57 or better, which is ridiculous.
Right.
Those three guys just gelled so well. And while I still think they managed to replace those three, Tkachuk and Gaudreau with some good talent, I don't think you're going to have the same kind of line that's just going to dominate as far as, the plus-minus scale is concerned. Now, on the flip side, I think now you're going to see a team that's more well-balanced, right, where you can have, your top six be, pretty much interchangeable as far as where you throw pieces at, right? I mean, you knew in last year in Calgary that Tkachuk and Gaudreau were on that top line. There was no getting around it. They were the guys, right? But now maybe you look at a guy like Toffoli or, Huberdeau. You look at pieces where you could move them up and down in that top six to make two really good lines here. And I think you're going to see a little bit more competitiveness out of both of these lines where they go in and they can both produce almost as equally good, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely a different look because you're not looking towards one line and going, holy crap, we have to stop that line, and you're kind of ignoring the rest. This is much more let's kill them by committee. However, let's not forget that committee, Huberdeau had over 100 points last year. Kadri had 89, something like that. You're also Mackenzie Weegar's a top 4 defenseman, so you bring him into an already pretty stacked D, and suddenly I think the way that things are slotting, this team is they've got lots of depth on defense, and now I think they might be better poised to play the kind of game that Daryl Sutter wants to play. And that's a game that, of course, they're going to attack and they're going to use their forecheck, but they're going to play that 1-3-1 and they're going to stifle you up the middle, and it's going to be just brutal trying to get to the net and make plays on this team. Their defense is so good. They have multiple. They've got like a shutdown defenseman on every single on every single pairing, which is ridiculous. Usually you don't see that. You don't see guys that you almost like you fear coming in. The fact that the Flames can drop Tanev on one pairing, Weegar on another, Zadorov, and then Shillington and Rasmus Anderson, Noah Hannafin being able to have a little more freedom. I think that this D is it might take a minute to kind of figure out where Weegar fits in, but once they do, I think it'll be an improved defense, and that really may be what you need against Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. You're almost, if you're gonna go and win the cup in the Pacific, you're probably going to end up playing the Edmonton Oilers. There's a good chance, or the Vegas Golden Knights, right? One of those two teams, you're gonna end up playing them if you go far in this division. If you make it to at least the second round, you're probably going to play one of those two teams. And what's going to stop those teams? A really good defensive structure, and you need good body, good players to be able to do that. So I do like those moves for Calgary, and I think they maybe don't win the division again, they were a very dynamic regular season team because of that top line, right? Like we saw the same thing. I'd say with Toronto, we saw the same thing. Just such a good top line, and things change come playoff time because you can really hone in on those lines. But in the regular season, those lines can dominate and cruise. You just don't have the same type of focus on one line in the regular season as you do in the playoffs. It's sort of maybe some of the reason, even though Florida got incredible depth, they had incredible scoring depth, still their high-end players were still by far their best line, and they were all together, and they were able to kind of shut them down. So maybe because of this team is actually better, but will have a worse regular season. You know, maybe they don't win the division. They end up in one of those 2-3 slots and just kind of work their way through that way and are a better playoff team and better prepared for that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any expectation that they need to go out and win the division, right? Like they don't have to set those kind of they can kind of play like Tampa Bay where they just want to get in, right? They want to take it easy, not pressure themselves too much or push too hard because they just want to get in the playoffs. And they know with their system and their coach, their goaltending, they don't need to, be the number one seed to go in there. They can just walk in and just kind of play their game. And like you said, with an improved D and, the team they have up front a little bit more balanced now, it should work pretty well. Now,
yeah. And by the way, best road team in the Western Conference last year. Right.
And so here's the other thing now too, right? So my question is, you had basically you were the only team to have a line of 340 goal scorers in the NHL last year, and they were obviously one of the top scoring teams in the league. But my only concern for this team is now if you do get into another firefight with Edmonton, and we saw what happened in Game 1 against that series, and sadly I was expecting that the whole entire season, but it didn't, or the whole entire series, but it didn't happen.
That would have been wonderful. 1980s
right.
all over again.
Exactly. So my question is, if you're Calgary, if you have to start scoring goals to win a game and not play that defensive system anymore, and hopefully, Calgary can stick to their game. I'm interested to see who on this Calgary team steps up because we know Jonathan Huberdeau is typically a passer, right? He's a pass-first kind of guy. Not to say that he couldn't score goals, but Kadri could be that guy, right? He could be a guy who could step up. But I'd like to see maybe who else really takes another step forward, right? Is it a Dylan Dubé or just Tyler Toffoli now that he gets a full season and right? Maybe he takes that next leap for Calgary now.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Tyler Toffoli because I think that, you're just 2 seasons removed in 2020, 2021. Tyler Toffoli had 28 goals in 52 games. He was lights out for Montreal. He was fantastic in the playoffs. And of course, for a bad Montreal team, he was still very good. He was a serviceable player. He was a good player. And then for Calgary, of course, he had an okay playoff. It's almost like they didn't really find a good spot for him. And I wonder if he gets a chance to either play the right side with Huberdeau or with Kadri, or with Nazem Kadri as his centerman. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up because he certainly has the potential to score 30 goals. I don't think that he's over that hill yet where he doesn't have the potential to be able to go out and score 30, maybe more, given the firepower around him. He's never really had great line mates. I can't remember when he was with LA. Was he playing with Anze Kopitar? I don't think he was.
No, it was Dustin Brown, and then what's his face in Nashville? Arvidsson. I know Arvidsson was playing with him for a while.
Yeah, but like 2017, 18,
and Justin Williams.
Yeah. Well, Justin Williams was a little further back than that, but because Toffoli, he had like 24 goals in 17, 18, and he's never been a huge point producer. Like 58 points is his best season. He had 31 goals, but certainly you put him with the right guys. I think that he can still fire that puck and get to the net, put the puck in the dirty area. So he'd be somebody that I'd be looking to have maybe a career year here at age 30 for the Calgary Flames, Tyler Foley.
Yeah, I could see a 30-30 type of season. 30 goals, 30 assists. No problem.
Yeah, the other guy that I wonder about is, Michael Backlund. He has been their second line center for a minute now, and really his whole career he's kind of been a second line center in the way that he's been relied upon. I think that he actually moving down the lineup, being the third line center potentially here, is maybe an even better fit for him if they choose to play Lindholm at center, and they get Lindholm, Kadri, and Backlund. I think that Backlund playing down the lineup a little bit could actually enhance his offensive abilities, because he's not the shutdown guy the same way that he would be if he was in the top six. So maybe he gets some more offensive opportunities. Maybe he gets close to the 20 goals he scored 4 years ago. But that'll be interesting. He's a free agent at the end of this year too. So those are the guys to always keep an eye on. Those UFAs on good teams. Those guys. He's got to be. Oh, he's not a UFA. I'm sorry. He's got one more year left on his deal. I was looking at Lucic, but anyways, you got to look at those guys, thinking he's got 2 years left. This is kind of that year to see where he can enhance himself.
Yeah, I think the third line center spot is going to be the right fit for him. I think at this point in his career and what he brings to the table as far as offense and defense. For me, one player that I'm just excited to see, because you talk about it, right? Contract years. Mackenzie Weegar. I mean, yes, he could pretty much slot in anywhere in this lineup as far as the top six is concerned. And I personally would like to see him placed with Chris Tanev, because I think he could add a nice balance to Mackenzie Weegar's offensive abilities, to where you can see Weegar just go ham, and for him to put up 50 to 60 points would just not surprise me at all right now.
Yeah, that'd be. I can see it. I wonder. Rasmus Anderson had 50 points last year. I think he's maybe that defenseman that it's kind of easy to forget that he's a 50-point guy last year. 46 assists, but he goes out and he signs his big deal a couple of years ago, and he's been definitely delivering at $4.5 million for his cap hit. And Rasmus Anderson, now the question's got to be, can he repeat that, and does he have an even higher ceiling? Because before that, his career high was 22 points, and he went out and got 50. We'll see if he can keep on producing at a super high level. That, I think, by and large, has a lot to do with the Tkachuk and Gaudreau line blowing up, and he was somewhat the benefit of that. But he's proven that he can feed the puck and be in the right place at the right time. He's very good at exiting the zone, and that's so important in this game. And so you got to think Rasmus Anderson is maybe that like unsung guy on the team, where he's just so important to this team, and yet maybe gets overlooked because of the other names on that blue line.
Yeah, if you look at it, right, the usage last year, it was pretty much Anderson and Hanifin together at least 32% of the time, throughout the game there. So when you look at that pairing and you think, okay, Hanifin put up 48 points, Anderson at 50, it's reasonable to think that those two guys are going to start camp together, start the season together as the top go-to pair. Yep. And so 40 points to me, at least, out of these two guys here, would not shock me at all. And with Weegar coming in now, you're going to, maybe see a dip in their, those two players. They're, maybe losing some power play time, or, not having to be out there all the time, as the top offensive defenseman pairing, So, what that does for their production, yes, maybe it might dip a little bit, a few points here or there, but I don't think it's going to drop too much.
No, they'll be playing top line power play minutes. I think they'll still get that nod. I think Mackenzie Weegar's probably going to slot in on power play number 2, and he's still going to get lots of time to play with very good players. That's the beauty of this, is that there's you're still going to get time with Blake Coleman, and depending on how they use these guys and split these guys up, there's going to be a couple really power lines on this team. But I don't know that they're the same high scoring team that they were last year. Not to say that their offense is going to dry up or they're not going to be offensively talented. They were the top scoring team in this division. Even like, you wouldn't think that this team would have more goals than the Edmonton Oilers, and there they were, 3 more goals than them. I wonder if that kind of pulls back a little bit. I don't see their defense, their goals against really changing much. Like I think they'll still be. They were tops in their division for goals for and goals against. So, or I should say, the best at it. Right. Bottom of the division for goals against, but in a good way. I don't see that number changing, but I do see maybe the offense pulling back just a little bit in the regular season, which could again cost them some games. And put them in a position to be in that 3 spot instead of the 2, which I don't think you really care about too much if you're the Calgary Flames. You just want to get in, and you're going to have to beat some good teams along the way, and I think you're in a good position to do so. I mean, we haven't even no mention of Jacob Markstrom yet, and he was fantastic for them all last year.
Yeah, lights out goaltender. I mean, there's no reason why he probably can't put up 55 to 63 more games this season. I mean, maybe not the .922 save percentage again, because that was a ridiculous number. But hey, if he puts up .920, that would not surprise me. The way this Darryl Sutter team likes to play. Obviously he's just got to be a little bit better in the playoffs than he was last year. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great either. So I think they need a little bit more out of him come playoff time. And, if they can get just a smidgen more, I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, it was like they didn't need him to steal games, but they really could have used him to steal some games. I don't know that Calgary last year was gonna get through Edmonton. Edmonton just seemed to, like, something happened in was it game 2? And just didn't seem like it was going to happen for Calgary after that point. But the Calgary Flames they're in a good position to take this division and to go deep in the playoffs. I'm curious, if you haven't listened to our previous Metropolitan Division preview, we've been giving our ceiling and our floor for each of these teams. We're not trying to give you the doom and gloom basement of everything, but the floor. Of course, every team has those moments where, or not every team, but occasionally there's a team where so many guys get injured and they miss the playoffs, like the Vegas Golden Knights did last year. We're not talking about that kind of season. We can't predict those types of things, but we've been given our ceiling and our floor for each team. So, Justin, where do you have the ceiling for the Flames and the floor?
Yeah, so real quick, one name I forgot to mention that I think people should keep an eye out for, that's Sonny Milano.
Yes, I have his tab up here right now, and I meant to bring him up, and I failed. Yeah, what do you think he'll sign in Calgary?
I do. I think there's a good opportunity for him to have some middle, second line or third line minutes here, because he can still produce offensively, and he's still got wheels, and he's young. So I think there's a good player still there that I think
he had
Darryl Sutter would like.
34 points last year, 14 goals in 66 games. I mean, this guy is. I mean, as far as his pace goes, he's basically a 20-goal scorer.
Right.
And you're going to get him. I mean, last year his cap hit was $1.7 million. I'm thinking you're probably going to be able to get him for $1.2 million, $1.3 million.
If that, maybe just a 1-and-1. I mean,
yeah, one times one. Yeah, and that's if Sonny Milano. My guess is that he'll get a contract offer from elsewhere, which can happen. On a professional tryout, you can get contracts from any other team. You're still technically a free agent. You're basically you're playing in the Flames training camp. But it would, I think, man, what great depth for the Flames to be able to have Sonny Milano added to this lineup. Like, that was probably maybe their biggest issue was that bottom 6 not producing, and Sonny Milano can score. I don't know why you wouldn't get him locked up quick. I don't know if there's question marks about whether he's healthy or what. I mean, I know he only played 66 games last season, but he's had the entire offseason to get healthy. I haven't heard anything about that. So obviously some concern, or their Flames are just like, we don't have to give you a contract right now, and we can kind of ride this into and see if you're a good fit. If he's not a good fit in Calgary, someone doesn't like him, I got to think another team's going to give him a deal. Like, this is not a player that you're just going to let go by the wayside.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, give me your floor and your ceiling.
Yep. As far as the floor is concerned, I'll start there. To me, I think this is just a wild card team. Looking at this division, right, there's LA getting better, Edmonton's getting better, Vegas is still there. Sure. Guys are getting healthy, so there's a potential.
Vancouver has some potential too to ruffle some feathers here in this division.
Yeah, absolutely. So I still think they're a playoff team, but worst case scenario for me is they make the wild card spot and sneak in, which is all they really need to do. But I'm sure Daryl Sutter would feel more confident in that 2 or 3 spot. Best case scenario, obviously, again, they win this division, I think, as well as they play defensively, and as little goals as they give up, it'd be easy for them to come in against a division like this that doesn't have a lot of, outside of Edmonton, a lot of high scoring teams. So you could see Calgary easily take the division. And then, of course, looking into the playoff picture, their ceiling for me would be Western Conference Finals. I still have my doubts. If you got to get into a scoring match with a team like Colorado or maybe even St. Louis on the other end. Edmonton. I mean, it's tough, right? Maybe they don't have the same firepower as last year to be able to put up goals. So to me, that's where I think their ceiling would end.
Okay, yeah. For a floor for me, I always try to go like what's like the worst case, and then go back from there and figure out like what's the true floor here. Like we're not trying to go to hell with this team. We're just trying to figure out if things don't mesh right, they're still a good team. Like I'm thinking, what happens if Huberdeau doesn't click with Sutter's system because he's used to a more loose system, or what happens if Mackenzie Weegar just, again, same deal, like just doesn't fit the culture, doesn't fit. He's a free agent at the end of the year, and he just kind of goes like, I can get out of here and I'm going to go somewhere else at the end of the year anyways. I'm not putting in like trying to question anybody's competitiveness or anything like that, or like their character. I'm just saying that you don't know what the fit is going to be until they actually are out on the ice, and so those have to be concerns because they're replacing monsters of players. Like they are replacing Gaudreau and Tkachuk, the faces of the franchise, and so you've flip flopped. And Huberdeau was never the face in Florida; he was always the other guy, right? Like, and it wasn't. Whereas in Calgary, it was Gaudreau and Tkachuk. But in Florida, it's just Barkov. Like it's been Barkov, and Huberdeau was his little sidekick. That's kind of the vibe that I always got. And so now he's here in Calgary. He's going to be the highest paid player next year once his new deal kicks in. They believe him to be a number one. Like I got like the way they're paying him. They see him as like the Patrick Kane, that kind of guy. I mean, he's as Panarin, like that type of player, the way that he's getting paid. He is Johnny Gaudreau, like he's his replacement. So that could be difficult to play through early on, especially if anything, if they don't start the season super well, there's going to be a lot of criticism and it's going to get aimed at them. And there's just probably not much you're going to do about that. People are getting used to those guys being on their team, and then Nazem Kadri, I think will be a good fit, but you can see he's had some incidences in the past. I know he was a younger guy, but Daryl Sutter's going to be a harder coach to play for than Jared Bednar in terms of that personality and the crustiness and all that. So I guess I just say the reason my floor is maybe a little lower than yours, which is actually missing the playoffs, is that there is a scenario where all these new faces up at the top, just something isn't right, and because this division is actually getting much more competitive, and I think Vancouver's better. I think Vegas is certainly going to be better. LA is going to be at least as good as they were last year. Edmonton might be even better. They're going to get a full year of Kane. They've got Jack Campbell. They'll have better goaltending. And Anaheim's probably going to be better. Seattle's probably going to be better. Maybe the only team that got a little worse is San Jose, but I just want my floor is they miss the playoffs because all these moves just don't work. But my ceiling, they might have the biggest Florida ceiling because my ceiling, really, I think this team can win the Stanley Cup. I think they are one of the, I do think that I know. I mean, they have to get through either a Colorado or they're gonna have to get through Vegas, Edmonton, whoever they end up seeing in the divisional rounds, and but because of their goaltending, because of Markstrom, and I think that those high end teams in the Central, some of them got worse, i.e. Colorado, because hey. Nazem Kadri, he's gone for free. You've got Georgiev instead of Kemper, which I think is a downgrade. You have some downgrades with this team, so I think they are vulnerable. And I think that Calgary, with that defense, has the ability to maybe take that extra next step and ultimately make it to the Stanley Cup Finals and maybe win it. So there's my ceiling. All right, so we're going from the true ceiling to the floor to the Seattle Kraken with our next preview. Give me your thoughts on Seattle coming into this year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we knew they weren't going to take the Vegas approach last year, right, to basically trying to rob people of talent and draft picks. So they went in with the mindset that, hey, we're not going to be great right away, and it showed, right? So obviously
they weren't even good right away.
Right. But I will say they have now, what excites me this year is we have the potential to see a future number 1 and 2 center on this team that I think could rival. I don't think they'll be as good as, a Crosby Malkin, but I mean, this could be, in the next 3 or 4 years could potentially be, one of the top 3 or 4, 1-2 punches in the league. And that's with Shane Wright and Matty Beniers here. I think those two guys, I mean, listen, Seattle got just blessed that everybody passed on Shane Wright in the draft and he fell to number 4. I mean, what a lucky thing to happen. I mean, gosh, Matty Beniers, I watching him last year, 9 points in 10 games, I thought this guy is going to be something special. And now you have the guy who is, I mean, for the last few years was projected to be the number 1 overall pick and falls into your lap here. So to me, what I see for this team is just growth this year and the opportunity to see these 2 young potential superstars really blossom.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Shane Wright is going to play for the Seattle Kraken this year. I think a lot depends on his camp and how well how mature he shows up. Matty Beniers is a lock. He's in. He's going to be this team's top line center or second line center, wherever you want to slot him. He's probably their most talented center at this point. Whether he plays number 1 center, I don't know. They might try to protect him a little bit, but either way, he's going to have a good year. This is going to be his true rookie season, and I mean, he's certainly going to be somebody who contends for Rookie of the Year. If he can put up that almost point per game pace, he's going to end up with 70 points this next year, and he'll almost be a lock for Rookie of the Year at that point. So it'll be interesting to see if he can keep that pace up. I wonder if Shane Wright, if they go, let's just send you back. I mean, he missed so much time in his development because of COVID and injuries that you just wonder if it would just be better, especially since they're not going to be that good, for him to spend some time in juniors. But you could also say, what's the point in sending a guy to juniors when he's already dominated juniors? Like, we know what he is. It's really the problem with the agreement the NHL has with the OHL and the AHL that, because he played in the OHL, he can't go to the AHL this year at 18. You have to wait till they're 20. So
it's so stupid.
it's dumb because it hurts the NHL in my mind. I mean, I get why the OHL would want to have it. It keeps them good players down. Hey, if you're not going to use our best players, then you got to give them back to us. in my opinion, I think that it should be the player's decision.
Absolutely.
The player should be able to say, well, if you're not gonna like have me come up, that's fine. I get to choose where I want to go. Do I want to go to back to juniors? Like if I feel like I'm better suited for juniors, then I'll go back. And if I don't, I want to go to the AHL. They should be able to go to the AHL. I just think that I understand that it's contractual, but it is probably one of the NHL's stupidest things that they've done, because for development, imagine in Major League Baseball drafting a guy first overall and going, you know what, we're not ready for this pitcher to be in the major leagues, but we have to send him back to college. We can't, at that point usually they're either, I know the way that baseball works is a little different, but it's like, what's the equivalent? We have to send him back to high school to play. That's kind of what it is. Like, yeah. You can't send him to AAA. You got to send him to a lower league. That's ridiculous. Like, you don't do it in any other sport. I mean, there's not a farm league really in football or in, but anyways, it's silly. And Shane Wright probably should just be in the AHL next year, which is what the Montreal Canadiens could do with Slafkovsky. But
right.
But you can't do that with Wright because he played in the OHL. I don't know. Seems dumb. But I digress. We'll keep talking about the Seattle Kraken, which, hey, if they decide to go Shane Wright and just say screw it, I'm here for it. It'll make them more watchable in my mind. It'll make it interesting to see.
Yep, I agree.
I'm letting you talk now because I just blabbed.
Yeah. I mean, listen, they've got a plethora of quality wingers, I think, between, their newly acquired Burakovsky. They've got Eberle, Bjorkstrand, who they got for basically nothing. Jared McCann, Brandon Tanev, Jaden Schwartz. They've got a lot of really good wingers. And so I think, for a guy like Shane Wright, especially, you can really put him with a quality guy on each side who I think can really help with his development. So, I'm hoping that they bring him up and on the back end, right, they don't have any standout defensemen that I think, when you look at this group of six here and you say, okay, this is going to be a group that can really go deep, right? That's going to produce for us. I don't think anybody's really there.
Yeah, they've got a couple 3-4 guys like Alexiak and
they're good
Dunn
enough.
and Larson. Yeah, they're maybe a 2 on an OKT, but yeah, definitely no number ones. You're pushing. I mean, they have top 4 defensemen, but just no number ones. Right,
absolutely. What I'm interested to see more than anything else, I think, for the season is, does Philip Grubauer get back to form, right?
Yeah, 100%. And Dreger.
Yeah, I mean, Dreger's obviously going to start the season on IR, and that's why they brought in Martin Jones. And so, Jones, I think, is going to be a fine backup for them, to put in 15, 20-ish games, whatever it may be. And I think that's probably a good thing, because now Chris Dreger can come in, he can play 20 games, and you don't have to play Philip Grubauer 60 games, right? You can put him in for 45, maybe 50 games and give him a look, and then you also give Chris Dreger a look, too, an opportunity to get healthy. So,
he'll be back in, I think it was something like February or March, or some, late in the season.
Okay, yeah.
I think it was a 7 to 9 month ACL injury that he got in end of May.
Okay.
So, whenever that 6 sets, that's like February. Maybe he misses the whole season, but you got to think he's going to push to try and make it back before the end of the year.
Yeah, you sure hope so, right? Because I think, with good goaltending, this team can be competitive, right? They might not win the division. They might not even make the playoffs, but I think this team can still compete. They can still go out there and be an entertaining team to watch, right? That's going to give you a good battle night in and night out, regardless how they finish in the standings. And that's ultimately what you want, I think, for a Seattle team, because you want to see them take that next step in their development, especially with a lot of these younger guys, like I mentioned with Matty Beniers here. You hope that somebody, rears their head as a leader too, because I'd like to see them put a C on somebody this year too, with Mark Giordano gone now. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, to me, it starts with Philip Grubauer getting back to form.
100%. You got to expect, the year before was really one of his best years at .922 save percentage. And then he goes to an 889. Obviously, much of that was the team in front of him, but he was just he wasn't there.
Yep.
I gotta think that he regretted signing there. I mean, that's just the way that his demeanor showed through that season. It just seemed like he didn't. He
Lost
regretted
the confidence.
Yeah, and you gotta think that he went. Oh, I could if I just took $5 million instead of 5.9, I would have a Stanley Cup right now. Instead, I'm on one of the worst teams in the league. and had one of the worst seasons. Had the worst season of my career.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make we should do a top 10 list on like worst
hindsight.
Yeah, biggest hindsight moves. That would be fun. We'll have to do that sometime. Give me your floor and your ceiling for the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah. The floor again, I think, is finishing at the bottom of this division. But that's not necessarily saying that that's a bad thing either, because I think what this team really wants to look to do is to balance out that goals for and goals against, and maybe make that more closer to maybe a negative 10, 15, something like that. I think is what would really look good for this team. And then as far as the ceiling is concerned, it's not necessarily making the playoffs, because I don't think there's any chance they're making the playoffs, but I think it's maybe in that 7-6 spot. Maybe you hop a team like San Jose or Anaheim, and you just take that next step where a lot of these younger guys, like I mentioned, Shane Wright, Matty Beniers, where they really elevate themselves and, take that next step towards being that amazing 1-2 punch. I think, 4 or 5 years from now, they really could be.
Yeah. I kind of echo that. I'll say their floor is last in the league, probably. That bottom. Well, maybe not further than Arizona, but certainly one of the bottom teams in the league. Definitely the last place team in the division. But my difference would be that their ceiling. I'm just going to give it amount of wins.
Okay.
I think their floor is probably in the same vein of where they finish, right around 25 wins for the year. And I think probably their ceiling's about 35, which, yeah, if they won 35 games, that would have put them ahead of San Jose this last year, albeit San Jose and Anaheim both had a lot of overtime losses and shootout losses, 14 and 13. So I don't know points-wise where that would have ultimately dropped Seattle 15. It would have given them an extra 8 wins, 16 points. It would have put them at 76 points. So that would tie them for the bottom. So I think that's probably about right. An 8 win swing for the Seattle Kraken. I can see them winning 8 more games than they did last year, and I can also see them doing about the same. So I think that's where I'd stand on them. But I am more interested in them this year than I was last year, because they might score some goals, and they have players that I want to watch. Whereas last year I just did not. I'm not. You aren't going to get me interested in the game by telling me that I get to watch Yanni Gordon, Jonas Donskoy. It's fine.
When Jared McCann is your highest scoring player, that's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we see Eberle, kind of get back to where we know he can be. I know he kind of had a 44 points, 21 goals. I think that he's better than that. So we'll see if he can get back to, that 25 goal mark, maybe 50 points if he's playing with good old Beniers all year long. Okay, well, let's go to what team did I say was next? I said that it was the Vegas Golden Knights.
Let's do it.
My biggest question is, what kind of impact does Jack Eichel have on this team for a full season?
Yeah, well, news came out today that they're expecting Mark Stone to be ready for camp. So that is amazing news, because when you do get a Jack Eichel that has a quality line mate, right? That was the problem last year. He just didn't have line mates, and you get a full season, a full camp with this guy. Because we know that Marcia Show, Riley Smith, Carlson, that's going to be their number 2 line there. And so when you get a full season of Mark Stone and Jack Eichel now, that's going to be fun to watch, because now not only do you have the ability to, put Chandler Stevenson on that line, or you could move him down to a third line center spot, you got Phil Kessel, who's not a bad setup man. So Eichel's got guys with talent around him for a full season now. I think this is going to be fun to watch, and I think Eichel's going to play with a little chip on his shoulder because, listen, I'm sure he's sick of missing the playoffs, right? I mean, when he was with Buffalo, it never happened, and he comes to a Vegas team where he's expected to vault this team into Stanley Cup contention. Now you miss the playoffs, and you're looked at as being like, oh, frick, well, you didn't do enough, right? And I don't put any blame on Jack Eichel for the way they finished last year. But now you come in with a little chip on your shoulder saying, you know what, we lost, Robin Leonard for the season. Everybody's got their doubts about us. Are we going to make it? Everybody else is getting better around us. Frick, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to torch some guys up here. I'm going to put up 100 points. Like, that would be my mindset if I'm Jack Eichel, and I hope he brings it this year, because if you get a full two-way, winger, Mark Stone, who can really play some good defensive hockey and basically put up a point per game alongside Jack Eichel, I think the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I guess maybe the next question is then who replaces Max Pacioretty, because he's someone who was you could count on him for 30-plus goals every year. And I know he was hurt last year, which was definitely a part of why Vegas struggled so much, because he wasn't healthy. But who can come in and replace his goals? Is it Phil Kessel? Does he kind of see a resurgence in his goal scoring, or do you just kind of get it by committee? Do you get Riley and Marchessault? Maybe William Karlsson is able to, get back to his. He had 43. 24, 15, 14, 12. Like, he's really, every year of that contract, he has dropped in goals scored. Now, granted, I know some of that was, fewer games, but still the pace that he was scoring at was far fewer than where he had been at before. His points are down every single year as well. But he had, you got to think that maybe this is the year where either is he going to find himself here? Like, he's got to do something, because I think if he has another down year, you've got to look at him as being somebody who the Vegas Golden Knights do their best to try and trade.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this is going to be a replace Max's goals by committee sort of thing. Now, I do think, when you get a full season of Jack Eichel, right, he had, 14 goals last season in 34 games. I think he's more than capable of being a 35-goal scorer for this team. Same thing with Mark Stone, right? He only got him for 37 games. He got 9 goals. So I think, a full season of him being healthy, you could get 25 to 30 goals out of him. I wouldn't put it past him. And then, if you want to look at maybe somebody younger, right, that might step up, take that next step, I would look at a guy like Nicholas Roy. I think he's still young enough. He's still developing a little bit. And I think signing that new deal here, that extension at $3 million a season, I think at, putting up 39 points last season, I think he could potentially find an opportunity to play with, he could potentially slide into that top line if maybe you don't want to put Phil Kessel up there or Chandler Stevenson, or he could potentially slot in, on that third line spot with a guy like Phil Kessel and have somebody who's dishing the puck to him really nice. Because, listen, I mean, even at his age, Phil Kessel can still dish it and still hand out assists. So
their power play is getting better just because he's on it.
Absolutely. And so if you get an opportunity to play on the opposite wing of a guy like Kessel, I think your production's only going to go up and you're going to score a few more goals. So to me, I look at a guy like Nick Roy and other guys staying healthy for the year to make up that lost production.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously, the biggest questions for the Golden Knights aren't going to come in the can they score some goals? I think if they're healthy, they'll score goals. It's going to be, can they keep them out of the net? Because the goalies that they're going to have defending that net are all three incredibly inexperienced in terms of being a starting goalie. I would say the only one who you could even allude to, I mean, no, none of them are starting goalie. I mean, maybe at one point, Aiden Hill, there was a point where you thought, oh, could he be the starter in Arizona? And it just kind of never happened. Obviously, Laurent Brossoit has spent his entire career as a backup, and then Logan Thompson has played all but 20 games in the NHL. So, who do you think takes the starting job first off, and then is it going to be good enough throughout an 82-game season with these three players?
Yeah, I think initially with Laurent Brossoit being on IR to start the season, I think this team's going to look for Adin Hill to grab it and go with it, right? He's in a contract year. He's been playing with some mediocre to poor teams in Arizona and San Jose, and he's looking for that opportunity to be on a winner and say, hey, you know what? I deserve a big contract. I deserve an opportunity to be a number one guy. Now, obviously Vegas isn't going to go ahead and hand him a contract extension. I think they expect him to either be a backup moving forward for them, or potentially he'll, vault himself into that starter conversation, much like maybe, a Georgiev has, and then go get a contract elsewhere. But for me, I think Adin Hill's the guy to start the year. But as the year moves on, I think this is going to be a by committee sort of thing, when they're just going to go with who's ever hot, right? Whether that's Logan Thompson, Laurent Brossoit, or Adin Hill, I think they'll just ride the hot hand and see where it takes them. But obviously, I think as a goaltender being in a contract year, I think Adin Hill has the best opportunity in my mind to be the number one guy here.
Yeah, my question is, because Logan Thompson is waiver exempt, there's a chance that maybe he's the odd man out just because of that, because they can send him down, and that makes it the easy decision, assuming that all things are equal. But yeah, I mean that's going to be the biggest question in camp, is that goaltending situation. I mean, there really is nothing more important for this team. I think they'll figure out the rest, but it's going to be that goaltending. And I guess I want to know, do you think that that was last year just a weird blip on the radar, or did we actually just see this whole team fall apart and it was like it's more systemic than just what we saw last year?
Yeah, I think assuming they don't go out and start dealing for the newest shiny toy on the market. Again, I think if they can get some stability as far as a roster is concerned, I think last year's a blimp, right? They had a lot of injuries, guys in and out of the lineup, no consistency. And so when you get a full year of Jack Eichel and under Bruce Cassidy, who I really like as a head coach, I think he's going to push these guys. And he's not the players coach, right? He's not that super friendly, Gerard Gallant they had here to start out their tenure as an organization. But I think they have a guy in here who knows how to win, who's going to push these guys and bring in structure. As long as they can get good goaltending, I think this team is poised to be towards the top of this division. I think they have enough talent on paper on that back end between Shea Theodore, Pietrangelo, Martinez, and the guys they have up front. They've got enough firepower to get it done.
What if Shea Weber was like, actually, I'm going to come back?
Oh, that would just throw a wrench in everything. I mean, with the LTIR money there, but that would be fantastic.
That would be funny. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's done. I think that's why they have a contract.
Right.
I'll say my ceiling and floor, because I think it goes with that conversation that I think that their floor, they've just shown us what their floor is. That in a terrible, terrible season, I think we would call last season just a train wreck for this team, they still put up 43 wins and 94 points. So I think this is the basement. The floor for this team is a 94-point season. Ceiling, they win the division, and I have no reason to believe that they can't win a round, but that goaltending, now they could go out and trade for a different goaltender, a starting goalie, and suddenly this conversation is moot because they bring in a good goalie. I don't think any of the goalies that they have are Stanley Cup winning goalies. Do they go out and try to get Varlamov, Jonathan Quick, Jonathan Bernier even would be probably better than what they have if he's healthy. That would change the conversation. But for me, the ceiling is a second round exit, because I don't think that they can keep the puck out of the net enough and score enough to keep up with Calgary or Edmonton or like these other teams in this division. Even beyond that, keeping up with Colorado or St. Louis, Minnesota. I don't know that I see it. So I'm saying a second round exit for the Vegas Golden Knights is their ceiling with their current goaltending situation.
Yeah, I actually have to agree with you on this one. I think goaltending is the biggest fear for me. I mean, as I'm sure it is for most Vegas fans, because if you can't find stability in net, especially with a new coach, probably trying to bring in a whole new system here for this team and more structure, if they can't gel and you can't find stability in net, and now your confidence is wavering every night, and you're just, you're afraid to pinch in a little bit more, or you're a couple feet back instead of up on that blue line, maybe where you should be. Now, again, I could see them missing the playoffs again, right? And, again, I think they'll still be competitive and, get close, but to me, their basement is going to be missing. Now, I'm with you too. Second round, I think, is where the ceiling is for me as well, because, again, I just don't trust that goaltending to put you over the hump. Now, I know, again, we saw it with Colorado, where really Kemper didn't steal any games. He didn't steal any series. And they still managed to go out and win the cup because
Colorado is a better team than this team is.
Absolutely, and that's where I'm getting is they're just much better structurally and internally as far as talent is concerned. So, again, I think they could get passed around without getting any goaltending. But if they get past, if they have to come up against an Edmonton or Calgary in the second round, that's where I get a little squeamish, because I don't know if it's gonna go so well if they got to play, a team like that in the second round.
Okay, there's the Vegas Golden Knights. We're going to close out the show with the Vancouver Canucks. Last season, Vancouver finished 40-30-12 with 92 points for fifth in the Pacific. They missed the playoffs by 5 points. They made a beauty of a run at the end of the year there. With Bruce Boudreau coming in, they were very far out of it, and he really helped to turn this team around. Salvaged a few seasons, and I think the biggest bright spot, of course, was JT Miller with his 99 points in 80 games, 32 goals for a career high. His previous career high was 72 points. So he ends up signing an 8-year deal, or I don't think it was 7-year deal for $8 million a season, $56 million. It's weird to me because the Vancouver Canucks were like, yeah, we want cap flexibility, and then they re-signed JT Miller. They re-signed Brock Besser. They really didn't do anything to give them flexibility with the salary cap when they did have the opportunity to do so. So I guess I'm not sure what to make of this team, to be honest. I think they're better. They also bring in Ilya Mikheyev from the Leafs via free agency, who was fantastic shorthanded. I think he led the league in shorthanded goals and a great penalty killer. Definitely could be a 20-goal scorer for the Canucks. I'm just not sure what this Canucks team is, or like what they're building towards. I guess we're saying that last year was an anomaly and that they should have been better.
Yeah, you hope so, right? I mean, listen, under Bruce Boudreau, the Canucks were 32 wins and 15 losses with, 10 OT losses for a .649 point percentage. And if you look at this division, that kind of percentage puts you right at second place in front of Edmonton. Now, can they keep that up through, an entire 82-game season? Absolutely not. I think there's going to be a little drop-off. Teams will get wise to what you're doing. And, I think, the best part about having Bruce Boudreau there was, you kind of saw Pettersson and Besser get a little bit better. And, it makes me wonder, because you hear the talk about, Bo Horvat wanting to stay there for life. He wants to be a Canuck for life. And they're working on an extension. It's, to me, right when you mentioned that cap flexibility, that's the first thing I thought of, is how are they going to squeeze him in there? And they're trying to figure out their identity, right? They, at one point last year, I thought, okay, cool, it's time to tear it down, rebuild. That's probably where they're going to end up going with it. They got rid of Travis Green. They bring in, new personnel here. And so, yeah, they're going to go through a rebuild at some point. But then they go out and they hand out extensions to Besser. They give JT Miller a ton of money and bring in some free agents here. So clearly they're not interested in rebuilding and going scorched earth like Chicago, but they don't have much money, and they got to get Bo Horvat re-signed, who I think is a fantastic number 2 shutdown center. But where the money is going to come from, I have no idea, because you got dead weight on the back end, as far as I'm concerned, between, OEL and Tyler Myers taking up a bunch of money where, maybe they shouldn't. And
I will say that Oliver Ekman-Larsson, of course, he's not playing up to his $7 million contract. which, by the way, he's actually making $10.5 million this year in terms of actual dollars. He'll do that this year and next year. But I'll say, I mean, he had a pretty good year. Him and Tyler Myers last year both played well defensively. I mean, Tyler Myers, not that I'm selling everything to plus minus, but a plus 15. He had an okay year. He wasn't, I'll say, the problem in Vancouver. So I think, despite them being overpaid, I think you can kind of go, well, yes, they are overpaid. That's $13.26 million. That should probably be more like $6 million, right? Like if Oliver Ekman-Larsson was making $4 million a year, everyone would be like, okay, this isn't so bad. This is fine.
Right. And it's much more difficult when you have a guy like Quinn Hughes and what he brings to the table for only $600,000 more a year. So,
well, sure. But I mean, that was that's his entry level deal, signing out of his entry level deal. And this was Ekman-Larsson's UFA deal. He also signed it with Arizona, and Arizona was desperate to keep him, right? Like they needed to keep someone. And it was him, so he got a kind of a sweetheart deal, but he also dropped off. I mean, considerably from where his pace was when he signed that deal. I mean, he was a 44-point player, 14 goals for a defenseman, which is fantastic. And then he's only had 30 points since then. So that's really where your issues are with Vancouver. I'm wondering, what's your over-under on 65 games for Thatcher Demko?
I was literally about to bring that up because, listen, I know last year with Yaroslav Polak, you didn't want to play him because you had that bonus at some point, and they were having, like you said, cap flexibility issues, and then eventually they just gave in, and now they have to deal with that money. But, boy, I think Spencer Martin is a quality goaltender. I think he's going to be a good backup for this team for a while. And, I mean, you saw it in a short little burst, 6 games, .950 save percentage. Now, that's not going to be the numbers he puts up again this year. I mean,
yes, it will.
I think as a Vancouver fan,
number one overall fantasy pick, Spencer Martin.
But, I mean, honestly, listen, between what you have there and you have Michael DiPietro, who can still be a quality goaltender backup as well, I think you're going to see a lot more opportunity for these two guys to get in the mix a little bit more and give Thatcher Demko some relief. So I think probably you're looking at 58, 57 games, I think, for Thatcher Demko this year because, listen, you as a Vancouver fan, I think you expect to be pushing for a playoff spot. And I think if you can keep him a little bit more well-rested and not have to go 65 games again this year, that would be ideal for the Canucks.
Yeah, I agree. Now, granted, if you are in the thick of things and down the stretch, you're just going to play him as much as he can handle.
Yeah, if you're right on the bubble there and you got to get in, absolutely.
Yeah. With this forward group, you gotta really, their top 9 is really quite good for, especially in comparison to the rest of this division, where you look up and down the division and they're not as top heavy as some other teams. Like they don't have the high end talent that, I'm not going to say that anyone on Vancouver is going to put up the same points that Huberdeau's putting up or McDavid or Draisaitl by any means. Vegas has some, Eichel and Stone but when I look at Vancouver, I see a team with a lot of depth in their top 9. Like I think they should be able to get some solid goal scoring throughout their lineup. When you consider that, Mikheyev might be between that second and third line. He put up 21 goals last year and can score bunches on shorthanded. Like I said, he can kill penalties. You've got Tanner Pearson, who I don't know that they've really found a sweet spot for Tanner Pearson here until late last year. He really started coming on and ended up scoring 14 goals in 68 games. So I think he's someone who could score some goals for them. And the other guy that came in through that Ekman-Larsson trade, Connor Garland, 52 points, had a really nice year. I mean, that was his career high. You wonder, is he done? Like, is that his ceiling, or does he have even more to it? And I guess, everyone's going to look at JT Miller and wonder, can he put up 100 points, basically 100 points again, or was that an anomaly? But this team could very well score goals down throughout the season, because Bruce Boudreau is going to continue doing what he did, and that was open everything up, kind of play that same style that the Rangers played, where they go, we've got one of the best goalies in the world back there. Let's just let him do his job and we'll do ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're any team in the league and you had to say, you know what, my top line is going to be JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, and Brock Besser, you're not upset about that at all, right? I would absolutely go into the season as my number one line on any team in this league. So, and give them a fighting chance to win every night. Now, another addition that we haven't even mentioned yet that I think is going to, have to find, I hope, much like Tanner Pearson, they can figure out a good spot for him and he gels well with somebody, is Andrei Kuzmenko from the KHL. I mean, this guy is supposed to be dynamite from what I hear. I mean, he put up 53 points in 45 games for the KHL, for the St. Petersburg team there. And, I mean, he was just, again, dynamite in the playoffs. He's just been nothing but a stud in the KHL. And so at 26 years old, he's got jets and he knows how to score. So he could be somebody who can come in and play on your second pair or your second line with, Bo Horvat and Connor Garland on the other side and really light it up, and then give Tanner Pearson an opportunity maybe on the opposite wing too. But man, they got some dangerous players up top there.
I don't want to say that he's going to be the same, but Kirill Kaprizov in his final season in the KHL had 62 points, 33 goals in 57 games. And Kuzmenko not too far off that at 53 points in 45 games and 20 goals. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, everything can translate differently. But if there's a chance that he's even 80% of what Kirill Kaprizov is, Vancouver might just have a secret weapon. Like there is a true, you can win Rookie of the Year at 26. Yeah, it's 27 is when you can't, right?
Yeah, Panarin won it at 26.
Yeah. So Kuzmenko may be a sleeper for Calder Trophy.
Absolutely, and not only that, but he's on a 1-year deal, so he knows.
Right.
And I'm sure his agent is whispering, you know what, go out there and light it up, and you'll get paid like Kirill the Thrill.
Yep.
Cash in.
100%. And hey, it might not be with Vancouver, but he maybe gets the opportunity to play with Pettersson or Bo Horvat or JT Miller. Like he's. That move could pay massive dividends for the Canucks, and I think there's the advantage of being being a team that can offer that type of opportunity into their top six. Not a lot of really good teams have just jump into our top six, no big deal. And
right.
We'll see what he can do to change. If he can do anything close to what Kirill Kaprizov did for the Minnesota Wild, then the Vancouver Canucks are going to be very, very happy. Well, with that said, should we do our floor and ceiling for the Canucks and get out of here?
Let's do it.
You go first.
All right. Yeah.
I want a copy off of you.
I mean, look, as far as the floor goes for this team, I think they're going to be similar to Vegas, where I think they're pushing for a wild card spot and just missing out. I think. I don't think they finish towards the bottom of this division at all. I think they're going to be very competitive under Bruce a full season and have an opportunity to really just let loose and play a little bit looser. And then as far as the ceiling is concerned, I think this is, again, similar to Vegas, where I think they could be a second round exit. I think that, again, there's going to be some growing pains, right? And that comes with winning. And, we've seen that with teams like Toronto. They've got to learn how to win first or got to learn how to lose first before they start winning. And hopefully Toronto does that this year. But, similar to Edmonton, they just couldn't get over that hump for a while. And I think now they've managed to do so. And so who knows where they go from here. But Vancouver, similar, I think, a lot of these younger guys like Besser and Pettersson who, really don't have too much of a taste of playoff success. They'll get in. And I think, depending on who they match up, whether it's, LA or, maybe, another team in the Central here. I think they have a good opportunity getting past that first round. But when you get in that second round and you got to go against those more experienced teams like Edmonton or maybe a team from the Central like St. Louis, I just don't really see them getting past that next step.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, a playoff berth would be similar to what Los Angeles, I think, experienced this last year, going, okay, all right, sweet, we got in, like, we can build off of this, right? So
yep.
I agree that ceiling is like, let's contend for the playoffs. I'll say their ceiling is a bubble playoff team. They might get in, they might not. They'll be right, like, it's the 8-9 battle kind of vibe. Maybe they're battling for third place in the division because the Central still is just so good, and they might have 5 teams make it again. But I think that's less likely this next year, where I think you'll go back probably to a four-team split between the two divisions. But I think Vancouver's ceiling is definitely a playoff bubble team and a strong playoff contender. With Thatcher Demko back there, they'll always be in the mix. And they've got plenty of talent up front. Their floor, though, I can see a situation where really the beginning of last year was a bigger issue than we knew. And yeah, Bruce Boudreau came in, had a great end of the year. There was nothing to play for, and they come in this next year and they have some of the same issues, and things turn on them quick, and they end up, in that 35 to 40 win kind of category where it's just not enough to get you into the playoffs, and you're not really on the bubble. You're far enough out of it where you go, we never really were in it. We just made it look like we were. So I'd say that's the floor for me for Vancouver. They're too good to be a team that's in the bottom.
Sure.
But maybe not good enough to make the playoffs, which is where everyone hates to be, right? It's the worst place to be. So, anyways, this division will be a lot of fun because there are a lot of teams that think they can make the playoffs in this division. So that'll make it a lot of fun. We'll do Pacific Division Round 2 next show, and you keep your eye out for that. Until then, go back, listen to all 3 parts of the Metropolitan Division preview, and you can follow us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. Justin, have a great rest of your night, and to our listeners, we'll talk to you soon.